If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, well, aging. In this episode, we look at quotes to inspire successful aging. Specifically, we asked ChatGPT to generate a top 10 list of quotes for successful aging. Corbin and Dr. Armstrong also include their top list for aging well. So, Corbin, do you know what episode this is?
It is our 100th episode.
So what do you think we should discuss in this milestone episode of the Aging Well podcast?
So in this episode, let's discuss quotes to inspire us to age well. Where should we start?
Let's start with ChatGPT and work our way through our list.
Sounds good. So ChatGPT's first quote is, "Age is not a limit, but a mere measure of wisdom and experience."
Yeah, that's from an unknown. What do you think of that quote?
I mean, it kind of sums it up, right?
Yeah, as we go through ChatGPT's list, I don't find them the most inspiring of quotes. I think some of what we brought up will probably be a little bit more inspiring. But yeah, I mean, this is a reasonable quote. Age is not a limit. We shouldn't be looking at aging well as being a destination, but more so as a process of getting to that fourth age as successfully as possible. And, we're going to have a lot of experience along the way. And, the more wisdom we gain, probably the better we do. But I don't think you have to gain wisdom to necessarily age. You can learn some of that wisdom a little bit earlier on. Let's go on to the second quote. "The art of aging well is the art of living well with purpose and passion." That's from Carolyn Worthington.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much what we talk about throughout the podcast is, you have to have that purpose. You got to do it with passion. And so there is a bit of an art to living well. So not much to say on that one, huh?
No. So this next one is from Walt Disney. It says, "Growing old is mandatory, but growing up is optional."
Yeah, I think ChatGPT kind of phoned that one in. There's nothing super inspiring about that. I think it's kind of one of those more whimsical kind of quotes about aging is, that growing up is optional. And yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a truth to that. We will grow old. That idea of old, I think, is a bit relative. You can be very young and be old, and you can be very old and be young. Yeah, I agree. Don't grow up. What do you think?
I used to agree with that. And recently my mindset has kind of changed. I think
that's because you get married and buying a house.
That's right. That's right. I do think that there's a level of maturity that you do have to hit. And the more you age physically, in the actual years, so transitioning from your 20s into your 30s, there has to be a maturity mindset of that as well. I'm seeing a lot of individual, like when I was in my 20s, I was a huge comic fan still. And I had like Spider-Man posters on my wall and stuff like that. And then as I'm aging, as I'm growing, I'm like, I don't really need to wear comic book shirts anymore. I don't know. I just think and it's funny that this quote's coming from Walt Disney because we see a lot of individuals in that same mindset that nostalgia is so important to people that they hold on to it and they're still rocking the same gear that they would rock when they were children, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from there. And I totally agree with that. I think, as we have kind of adopted talking in regards to the four ages. The four ages are, in a sense, growing up. It's moving through levels of maturity that are going to help you to be successful in your fourth age. And so without that, if you're still living in your mom's garage, wearing your Metallica t-shirts and reading your comic books when you're 35, you're not going to have a successful, I would say not a successful second age, because you haven't even left the first age and you're 35, but you're certainly not going to have a successful third age. And where's that going to put you into your fourth age?
Right.
And so I think really where he's coming from with this is that youthful sense you don't want to lose, that sense of mystery, that sense of newness, the sense of wanting to learn, the things like emotionally and spiritually we experience in first age. We don't want to lose that as we go into the second, third age and on into the fourth
Totally.
age.
I mean, still have that hunger and that passion and that desire as a child would to seek something new, but have the maturity to as life throws wisdom your way, right?
Right. Yeah. So you can grow up in wisdom and maturity, but still kind of keep a little bit more of that childlike interest in the world.
Okay. Quote number 4, aging is not lost youth, but a new stage of opportunity and strength. Woo!
It's by Betty Friedan.
I love that one.
Yeah, that's a great quote. I think that is pretty representative of what we try and talk about on the podcast pretty regularly. It's everything is an opportunity. And, we talk often about opportunity costs. And, as we are aging, each day, each moment is a new opportunity to gain strength, to develop, to become better. And aging is important. I want to age. I don't want to stay in my youth. I don't want to be trapped in a certain age. I want to grow. And with that growth, it's going to require days on the calendar, months, years, and so on. So, all right, the next quote is from Brian Tracy. And I like a lot of his stuff, but it says, "The secret of successful aging is to embrace change, to adapt with change, and maintain a positive attitude."
Yeah.
Pretty good wisdom. And I think it kind of follows from the fourth quote there. Anything really to add or talk about with that?
No.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good quote. ChatGPT, you did pretty well in picking that one. What's number 6?
Number 6, aging is an extraordinary process where you become the person you always should have been. David Bowie.
And I almost want to hear that in a British accent because that's from David Bowie.
Yeah.
Good quote coming from a great rocker. It is a process. And as we've talked about, it is developing with purpose. It's aging with purpose, becoming better each and every day. I always love the quote, be your best today, be better tomorrow. And that's part of that aging process.
Well, also part of that aging process, it kind of reminds me of a different quote, and I don't know who it's from, but it says there's always an internal battle that the person that you're tempted to be is fighting with the person you're created to be. And I think as we walk down that road of life, we see the person that we were created to be is right around that corner. And just like the individuals we were discussing with the Disney quote, it's kind of hard because you're so tempted to be in this comfort zone, but that's not what life is about. You have to get outside of that comfort zone in order to get to that next level of where you need to be.
Sounds good. Next quote is Frank Lloyd Wright. One of my favorite architects when I was a child. "The longer I live, the more beautiful life becomes."
I think so. I think a lot of us have the mindset that, oh man, getting old sucks. Being an adult is hard. And when you're transitioning from your teens to your 20s to your 30s, it's kind of a challenge because you're moving out on your own. You're paying your own bills. The comfort blanket of your parents is slowly ceasing to exist. But once you hit your mid 30s, at least in my experience, you kind of have a grasp on everything. You got everything down to your science, and I don't know, you start seeing the world at a different perspective and a different perception, and things that used to stress you out or used to bug you, they don't really bug you anymore. They kind of seem irrelevant. And so, yeah, I think if that's where I'm at now, mid 30s, the older I get, the more beauty I will see in this world, the better experiences that I can see and filter out some of the negativity that's out there. I think
Yeah,
that's a great
I
quote.
think it's really a matter of attitude and gratitude, as we've talked
Ooh.
about the two T's. What's the next one?
To age is a privilege. To age gracefully is an art.
Yeah, and that's by an unknown author.
I don't know if aging is a privilege. I think it's just something we all do.
I think
But
it's an opportunity.
to age gracefully is an art. I do agree with that.
Yeah. A great quote. Not certainly one that I put on my top 10 list, and I don't know if it's on your top 10 list, but it was on ChatGPT's. So number 9 is wrinkles on our faces are the etchings of our life's journey, each one representing a story worth telling. Again, unknown.
I don't know how I feel about that one. Yeah.
Do we really have to have the wrinkles? I mean, I think if we treat our skin right and we're well hydrated and some of the things, the wrinkles are going to be a little less prominent.
I think the take home message on this one is, if we do get wrinkles or we do get crow's feet or whatever the case may be, like, don't be upset about that. That's just like, embrace it because it's part of life and it's part of your life and it's part of your story.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could equally put in there the scars of life,
right?
Are a story worth telling as well. Yeah. And no matter how hard, challenging our life may have been, and the things that we face, that's all leading us to our purpose, and it's having a hopefully positive impact on those around us and the universe as a whole. And so, embrace those wrinkles, embrace those scars, and tell your story. I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging.
The truest definition of aging well is to continue to make a difference, no matter your age. And that's from Michelle Obama.
Yeah. I read through this quote again kind of a few times this morning. I'm like, it's kind of a oddly worded quote. I wouldn't have put it on my list. I understand kind of where it's coming from, but it's just not a well-worded sentence. I'm sorry, Michelle Obama. It's just, I don't know. It's not a great quote to me, but I understand where it's coming from, that, our purpose is to be making a difference no matter what our age is. And as we age, we really should be making significantly more difference in the world. What are your thoughts on this one?
No, I kind of agree with this one, though. The truest definition of aging well is to continue to make a difference, no matter what your age is. I think no matter what stage of life you are, you do have a role that affects your community or the people around you or the world. Even no matter what that role is, step into it, no matter what age you're in.
I think I kind of fall back to Mrs. Mary Moore's English classes in high school. And I have trouble with the structure of the sentence. I think, for succinctness, you would just want to say the truest definition of aging well is to continue to make a difference, period. And then I'd be satisfied with it. So let's go on to our own quotes.
Okay.
Who should go first?
Do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. Age before beauty. So my first quote is from one of my favorite inspirations and authors, and that's Orison Swett Marden. It's the difference between the positive and the negative mind. The man who can assert the I with vigor and the man who cannot is the difference between success and failure. The positive man keys his life to the I can note, the negative man to the I can't.
I got really deep right there at the end.
Yeah, I'm a little bit deeper than ChatGPT.
Yeah.
That's the difference between AI and, EI, emotional intelligence.
Ooh, okay. Wow. Do you want to dive into yours?
I mean, I that whole mindset of can't, never, done, nothing kind of permeates out of this. And anybody doesn't know who Orison Swett Martin is, he's the creator of Success Magazine. And he goes back, I think he's in the late 1800s, early 1900s, very prominent, kind of really one of your first, I would say, your motivational writers or your self-help kind of writers that, seem so prevalent today. He was one of the first and wrote a lot about really the mindset of success. And it's focusing in on what you can do and, not focusing on what you can't, and just asserting yourself and being positive. And I think to age well, you have to have that positive mindset. You have to recognize I can, and recognize that, it takes some effort to age well, but it's doing the right things and not resigning yourself to, well, I'm getting old, I'm not going to be able to do this. That's how you can't do it. Just because you're ticking off another calendar year doesn't mean that you can't accomplish new and better things. So what do you think? Anything to add to that?
No, I totally agree with that one.
All right. What's your first quote?
My first quote is help others and give something back. I guarantee you will discover that while public service improves the lives of the world around you, the greatest reward is the enrichment and new meaning it will bring in your life.
And who's that by?
That's actually from Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, then you should have done it in the right voice.
Should have.
Give back.
I think he brings up a good point, though. Although we discuss a lot about aging well here and how we can age better, one of the things that we talk about is that social aspect and giving to the community. And I know with my own personal experience, being a part of something bigger than myself or being actively involved into my community, it really makes a difference in my life. So just, yeah, I thought that was a perfect fit.
I think it underscores that a significant part of aging well is the sense that we have a responsibility to age well. We are not supposed to age to a level of dependency, where we're kind of reverting back to childhood, where now somebody has to be changing our diapers and taking care of us and doing all those types of things. We have a responsibility to develop ourselves so that when we are in those mature years, we have a greater capacity to give back to the up and coming generations.
Nailed it.
Go to number 2. My number 2 is from Jim Rohn, another favorite author of mine. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I've used this quote often. So it is one of my favorite quotes for aging well.
It's kind of like that old quote, like, show me your friends and I'll tell you what kind of person you are.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much related to that. And, if we want to age well, we need to be around other people that want to age well, And it was interesting when I was having the conversation in our last episode with Dr. Joffrey. He was talking kind of the same thing. As you get older and you have kind of philosophy of being in shape and doing those types of things, you can't be around people that don't want to do those things. And so if you want to age in a certain way, find those people that want to age the same way. You're not going to do yourself any benefit if you're going to hang around with people that are always moaning about their joints hurting or how hard it is to get old and how horrible it is to go bald and all the other stuff that kind of comes with aging. It's, hang around with young people that are going to, they're trying to keep up with you. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is in every failure, there's something to be gained, even if it's only practice for the next test you'll have to take, because that next test, it is coming. That's a guarantee. And that's by David Goggins. I think it's true. I think a lot of people, they focus so much on their failures and they kind of let that failure or their mistakes in life get them down. And I always like to say, we don't make mistakes. We just make learning opportunities, because everything that we do, whether it's a mistake, whether it's a success, it is a learning opportunity, and it gets us to where we need to be and who we should be in the long run.
I thought I made a mistake once, but I was wrong. Anytime I think of failure, I go back to Jim Hartshaw, who we had on the podcast last year. I forget exactly which episode that was, but listeners should kind of go back and listen to that. His podcast is titled "Success Through Failure," and a lot of it is kind of build off of his experience as a wrestler and a wrestling coach. And there's a saying in wrestling that, in wrestling, there are no winners and losers. There's only winners and learners. And when we have that attitude of failure just simply being a stepping stone to the next success, we're going to be more successful. And you can't succeed without failure. If you're not failing, you're not moving forward. I like to think, if I'm falling, I want to be failing
forward. Yeah. I like that.
So my number 3 is a man has to learn that he cannot command things, but that he can command himself. He cannot coerce the wills of others, but he can mold and master his own will. And things serve him who serves truth. People seek guidance of him who is master of himself. And that is James Allen, who is another one of my favorite authors from, a couple centuries ago, maybe not a couple centuries ago, but goes back at least 100 years or so, author of As a Man Thinketh. So again, it's about that positive mindset and taking one's own responsibility for aging well.
Man, that almost sounded a little Marcus Aurelius right there. That the last bit, people seek guidance of him who is a master of himself.
Yeah, I feel like he's probably somewhat influenced by that. And when you think of the Stoic mindset, you're talking about somebody really having self-mastery. It's a little bit different, and we'll actually have that in an upcoming podcast. I talk a little bit about the Stoic aging. But yeah, I love James Allen, and I go back to that a lot. And I think a lot of what has influenced my thoughts on aging successfully or aging well has come from the writings of James Allen, and the idea of it's all in how we think and how we master ourselves.
My number 3 is obstacles don't have to stop you. If you run into a wall, don't turn around and give up. Figure out how to climb it, go through it, or work around it. Michael Jordan.
All right. Yeah, so I go from a wrestling to a basketball reference, and I'm going to go back in my next one to a wrestling reference. So I'm just going to jump to that one. And that my number 4 is from Dan Gable, the Dan Gable. The first period is won by the best technician. The second period is won by the kid in the best shape. The third period is won by the kid with the biggest heart. I can't make a list of quotes without including a wrestling quote in there. And, I think, there's several other Dan Gable quotes that I could have probably put in here. But as I think of this one, I think of how we move our way through the 4 ages and, finding a path to successful aging. And I might actually rephrase this in consideration of the 4 ages to read something like, the first age is won by the one born with carnal privilege. The second age is won by the one with spiritual privilege. The third age is won by the one who has best prepared. And the fourth age is won by the one who lived the earlier ages to their fullest. What do you think?
God, nailed it. Just so good.
I'm just full of wisdom.
Yeah.
That's because really I'm older than you. You'll catch up.
I'll catch up. All right. Well.
Any other thoughts on that?
No, I think what you said was almost deeper than this one. I like your spin on it. Okay, well, we're going to go from your wrestler to a boxer. Muhammad Ali once said, "Don't count the days, make the days count."
Yeah. Perfect quote for aging well.
Yep.
I don't know what you can add to that.
It's
Make the days count.
make the days count.
We only have a limited time on this earth, and if you don't make the time count, then you have not aged well. And it's interesting. My next quote is from Seneca, so another Stoist. So my number 5 is: "Life is long if you know how to use it." And I don't know really what to add to that. It's
Again,
kind of
that's
like Muhammad
about
Ali's
let every moment count. Don't let it pass you by.
yeah.
We always hear, life's too short. It comes up so fast. Yeah. But if you make every moment count of it, you can extend that shortness.
And even people who, for whatever circumstances, have a shorter life, that life can still be well lived. I think of Matty Stepanek, one of my favorite writers, poet. Kid was only, I think he was 12 when he passed away, but he'd written 5 books on poetry, his heart songs. And in that kid's short life, he had wisdom far beyond many of the, you know, octogenarians that are walking the earth right now. So live long and use it well.
Okay, so my next one is, don't expect to be motivated every day to get out there and make things happen. You don't. Don't count on motivation. You must count on discipline. And that's from Jocko Willink.
It was one of those more popular kind of
Yeah,
catchphrase kind of guys. But yeah, I mean, I think you need motivation. But that motivation has to come from within. It can't
totally.
come from without. Anybody that is more externally motivated is not going to age as well as somebody who is able to generate that motivation from within. So my number 6 is another Stoic. It's Marcus Aurelius this time. It's: "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." And I kind of think of that, is we exercise our thoughts on this podcast on a weekly basis. If I'm not aging well, then I'm wasting all of my effort and time with this podcast. And so, it's, I don't want to say, we shouldn't be discussing what it means to be aging well. You can't get into a lot of some of the nitpicky things that people talk in terms of like nutrition or the exercise that you should do. It's like, hey, do what's working for you and just go out and age well.
What's crazy about Marcus Aurelius is he wrote that how many years ago? And yet it's still relevant to this day. And I actually just watched a documentary on him. So he didn't even write those quotes that we are still looking at today in his native language. He wrote it in a completely different language altogether in order to impact the world around him. But he wasn't doing it for an audience. He was writing it in his own private journals. So he was writing it in his own private journals to himself in a language that wasn't even his native language. And it's like, wow, why don't we have someone like that to impact our lives today?
I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with that. It's, why don't we have those people? I mean, you brought up David Goggins and Jocko Willink and, some of these other, even Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't think many of these voices today, some of these, YouTube influencers we see and, people that are on social media are going to have near the relevance 100, 200, 300, 400 years from now as some of these voices that have been much more focused on living it themselves, being the good man, but doing it from a perspective of purpose and knowing that by being a good person, by doing these things, we're having an impact on the world, and being intentional on trying to have an impact, even though that's not our primary goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, the only person that I could think of that had more inspirational quotes than Marcus Aurelius in this most recent century would have to be Vince Lombardi. And one of his quotes that I have is, "The measure of who we are is what we do with what we have."
That was a good segue into your next quote.
Yeah.
Vince Lombardi. I don't have any Vince Lombardi quotes on here, but he is another one that I frequently go back to many of his quotes. And the other is Yogi Berra.
Oh, Yogi Berra, yeah.
Yogis are just there for the humor. But yeah, Vince Lombardi, I think, his intent was to motivate his team, but in the process was able to create a level of motivation that carries, generations after he had his impact.
There's literally, when we were doing research to look up these quotes, there's an entire website and just page after page of Vince Lombardi quotes. It's a whole history of Vince Lombardi, and I couldn't even comprehend all of the quotes that he said. I was like, wow, not just like one or two big ones, but hundreds of them.
Yeah, pretty prolific. All right, so my number 7 comes from Daniel J. Levitin, the author of Successful Aging. A neuroscientist explores the power and potential of our lives. And it's kind of a challenging quote to kind of hear, I think. I can read it and see it all, but I'll try and do my best to kind of read it well. Spend time with people younger than you. See your doctor regularly, but not obsessively. Don't think of yourself as old, other than taking prudent precautions. Appreciate your cognitive strengths, pattern recognition, crystallized intelligence, wisdom, accumulated knowledge. Promote cognitive health through experiential learning, traveling, spending time with grandchildren, and immersing yourself in new activities and situations. Do new things. Not a real go get 'em kind of quote, but I think it's a good kind of practical wisdom for aging successfully is, we've already mentioned today, spending time with people younger than you. Don't spend the time with the people that are going to bring you down. I know a lot of people that are younger than me that feel a lot older. And, those are usually the people like, really, you're 60? I would never have guessed you were 60 years old. And I don't want people to guess that my age is what it is, because I should be behaving younger in terms of my physical behaviors and things like that, and how I feel about my age. See your doctor regularly, not obsessively. I think that's a good wisdom. And I like what he says about, really appreciating your cognitive strengths. We've talked about dementia pretty frequently on the podcast. And we know that there are things that we can do to minimize our risk of cognitive impairment as we age, but we're not guaranteed those things. And so we have to do the things that are going to best exercise that, best preserve that, and hopefully maybe delay any risk of cognitive impairment, but appreciate it when we have it, and use it. Gain knowledge, learn, do all those types of things, and then experience life, travel, spend time with your grandchildren, learn new things, do new things. I think these are just some good wisdoms for anybody who is looking to age successfully or to age well. Thoughts?
No, I mean, I have no thoughts on that. It all summed up perfectly.
You have no cognitive...
I have no cognitive thoughts on that one.
All right. Well, what's your number 7?
Well, my number 7, I think it's funny that you had a neuroscience, and I am bringing in another famous scientist who said, everyone should consider his body as a priceless gift from one whom he loves above all, a marvelous work of art, of indescribable beauty, a mystery beyond human conception, and so delicate that a word, a breath, a look, nay, a thought may injure it. That's Nikola Tesla.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of true, because we talk about the importance of aging well and that we need to focus on our physical health especially with us being, exercise scientists, we really focus on that. But our body, for lack of a better word, it kind of has a mind of its own. We could be in a situation where we don't think that we're affected by it, but if that adrenaline spike comes in and you get in that fight or flight, your body kind of reacts, but your mind's trying to calm down your body. And so to have that harmony between mind and body is not only an art form, but it is a blessing, and it is a gift that one can only do through their process of aging well.
Yeah, I don't know what to add to
okay,
that.
Sorry.
Kind of look at, again, we go back to spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, and social. When we're trying to work in those things in balance, we're really kind of taking care of our body as a whole. You think of the things that we do to maintain our automobile. We can just wash and wax it constantly, but you never change the oil, you never drive it, you don't put air in the tires. The car is not functional. It looks great, but it's not functional. Or we can, take care of the engine, do other things, but we can neglect other areas. We need to kind of look at the wholeness of the body. And, I think one other kind of maybe not as easily detected piece in that is the appreciation that he is expressing for this creation, this human body that we have, and just the wholeness of how we have this conscious capacity to impact the world, but our body is also very capable of basically manipulating itself, maintaining homeostasis, healing itself, and responding to external stimuli. I think I'm an exercise scientist and an anatomist because I have this just tremendous appreciation for the human organism.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a good quote.
Thank you.
All right. My last few kind of get a little bit more on the lighter side, but I think still worthwhile quotes. They become a little bit more PG rated. So my next one, number 8, is from Jim Wendler. Is if your shit is good, it'll show in the results.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah. I don't know what to add to that. What would you add to that?
I mean, yeah.
There's a few underlying themes in there. And part of it is have the confidence in what you're doing, and if as we have aged successfully and we have learned and we've matured, it's going to show in who we are becoming. And who we are shows the level of effort and development that we've put into ourselves. Now, certainly Jim Wendler is talking more in terms of training for, in his case, more powerlifting. And so, if you're programming your exercise well, you're doing the right things, you're eating right, you're exercising hard, it's going to show in your results. You're going to progress. And so I think the same theme is there in terms of aging well. If we are doing the right things, if we're eating a healthy diet, we're exercising, we're developing our mind, we're utilizing our mind, we're working on our social relationships, it's going to show in what we're doing. And so, if we don't leave this podcast and go out into our communities and people not say, hey, yeah, I listen to your Aging Well podcast, but I look at you and like, yeah, you're full of shit, dude. You're not doing what you're talking about. We're not being successful here. But if people say, hey, yeah, I see what you're doing, what you're talking about actually is working, then our shit is good.
I'll actually switch one of mine up. I'm going to do a spin-off of that one. And it is, if you're the best at everything, you've got no one to challenge you and make you better. Brian Shaw.
I like Brian Shaw. Actually, I love Brian Shaw. I love just his attitude with things and everything else. And yeah, it's just, it's about pushing ourselves to get better and not kind of resting on our own accolades. And there's always somebody that's going to be better than us at something. So try and work on getting better at everything. All right. And my next one, and hopefully I'm going to pronounce this name right. It's from Shakuntala Devi. I hope I pronounced that right. If I did not, my apologies. But the quote is, nobody challenges me. I challenge myself. Again, I think it goes back to that internal versus external motivation. And if you want to age well, it's got to come from within, not from without. Although, never hurts to take on a challenge. If I look at somebody else and wow, that person's really doing this right, they're really aging well, I want to emulate that. It's not them that's challenging. They're not standing there saying, "Look at me, I'm more fit. I'm aging better than you. Why can't you keep up?" They might be doing that, but ultimately, it comes down to me saying, "Well, yeah, well, I'll take on that challenge. I'm going to challenge myself to be better." So, challenge to get better always comes from within.
Yeah, totally. It's got to come from within. It does. I mean, I don't know.
Huh? All right. What's your number 9?
My number 9 is, and this is one that was kind of read to me when I was young child. It goes, "You're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think." I'll give you a hint. It's actually not by Winnie the Pooh. It's by A.A. Milne.
Which is technically Winnie
the Pooh.
Yeah, good quote. What's to add?
Honestly, though, the reason why that, maybe it's from the nostalgia of reading it when I was younger as a small child, but whenever you, or at least for me, whenever I'm in a really, really frustrated scenario and I can't figure out how to get out of it, I actually go back and I think about that quote when things feel absolutely hopeless. I think about that quote and I'm like, you know what? It's going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine.
And I think that's the importance of maintaining, certain levels of quotes, having those quotes that impact us. If we're going to successfully age, if we're going to age well, we need things that are going to motivate us. And we find the things that are going to personally motivate us. That quote may not be as motivating to me. I mean, it's obviously we didn't come up with the same list of 10, totally. But each of our quotes has a certain impact on ourselves, but can have an impact on others. And so, yeah, not nostalgic about it. It's bringing that wisdom from our youth into our advanced ages. So good job. All right. My last one is from Dr. Mike Israetel. I really like his presentation and his knowledge base. He is a sports scientist, pretty popular on YouTube. I love a lot of his videos. If you're going to watch his stuff, though, you got to be a little bit more Teflon skinned with the language that he might use, but good stuff. But I love this quote. It says, "Time trying dumb shit is time not growing from guaranteed shit." And I like that from the physical training standpoint. We have a lot of people who they go onto social media and they see all these fitness trends and, oh, I'm going to try that. And they bounce from trend to trend and they never see results because those trends don't really work. They're following after these promises of hacks and easy pathways to success, and those never work. If you want to be successful, you got to look for the stuff that is tried and true and oftentimes quite boring and quite simple, but it's the guaranteed shit.
Right.
And I hope that that's what we're accomplishing on this podcast is we try and work our way through some of the BS that's out there and try and, this is the stuff that really works. Follow this. So, yeah.
Like an
time trying dumb shit is time not growing from guaranteed shit.
Kind of like an iron sharpens iron mentality.
Yeah, that's kind of a cleaner way of saying it. But.
So I'm going to end ours on another Marcus Aurelius quote. And it goes, "Accept the things to which fate binds you and love the people whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." And I think that's a perfect summary of aging well, because as we walk through the road of life, we're going to be in a situation where that path just took us on, and we're going to see people on that path, and those people are eventually going to branch off and take their own path. And so to be appreciative of every experience that we've had through that journey of life is something we should cherish and hold on to, because it's part of that experience. It's taking us to where we need to go and where we need to be, or to branch off and take our own path, blaze our own trail.
And I think, those paths that we take and the interactions that we encounter along that path are not only for our purpose, but for a more universal purpose. That we have to understand that we are constantly impacting others, and others are impacting us. And the stuff that happens in our lives, it gets us to where we are now. And the choices that we make going forward are going to dictate how successful we can be going forward. And so, any final thoughts as we seek to age well?
Man, final thought, no. I think the number one thing that all of these quotes had in common was it's that attitude. And as you like to say, attitude or gratitude with 2 T's, it's a mindset of moving down that road of life. And you're going to come in between some challenges and obstacles, and you can either sit there and just say, well, this is hard, or you can have that inner grit and you can move forward and you can get to your final destination of where you need to be.
And I think another underlying theme in all of these quotes has basically been, it's our own responsibility to age well.
Yeah, it is our responsibility to age well.
Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.